news sites and giving it to the old line newspapers. I mean, that was actually proposed last week by the Federal Trade Commission. That is absolute robbery.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, this is what they do. They're going to use money and power to try and destroy us. You know, we are the X-wing fighter pilots fighting against the Death Star, and the Death Star is very big, and Darth Vader is in charge. You know, this is a tough battle we've got.
Well,
to fight.
I guess that's like the BBC, where they don't fund James Dillingpole to write for a private newspaper, but they tax everyone to pay for BBC brainwashing.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point. Yeah, we have to pay annual license fee. I've forgotten what it is now. It's over it's about getting on for $200 in order to fund an organization which promotes a view of the world which is essentially of the liberal left. You know, no organization has been pushing harder for HEW, man-made global warming, than the BBC. And the reason for that is, well, one reason, apart from its essentially liberal ideology anyway, is that the BBC's pension fund is exposed massively to the carbon trading market, which, of course, as we know, Al Gore is heavily involved in, Goldman Sachs are heavily involved in. They can't afford for anthropogenic global warming to collapse because their pension fund will collapse too.
In fact, we've now seen the second wave of propaganda. Every issue of Newsweek, Time Magazine, New York Times, National Geographic, the global warming's worse than we thought. We're all going to be dead in 3 years on the coastlines if we don't do this. Meanwhile, Al Gore just bought a giant mansion right on the beach. And we do see the stock on carbon trading companies going down. And the word is from the Bilderberg Group, from our inside sources, is that one member said we're just about whipped on our global warming tax scheme. So I don't think that the king's horses or the king's men can put their global warming tax scam back together again.
Well, we have truth, justice, we have the facts on our side. They unfortunately have the structures that have been built over the years by organizations like the Club of Rome, which I'm sure your listeners are familiar with. You know, when you've got organizations like the Gorbachev Foundation, the Club of Rome, the Club of Budapest, the Club of Madrid, the entire United Nations, the entire European Union, the leaders of pretty much every major Western economy, including, David Cameron. Of course, you've got Barack Obama. When you've got all these people supporting the idea of man-made global warming and, imposing new tax and regulation to deal with it, you have a serious problem. Even if you've got the facts on your side, how do you resist the state?
And they're not stopping. I mean, they don't care if their approval ratings go down. They don't care if you don't like naked body scanners. They don't care if you don't like home inspections. They don't care. They are clearly authoritarians. And more I see newscasts all over the place where they imply that you better stop criticizing the government. You're going to cause violence. You're going to cause violence. And so they're selling this message of free speech causes violence, therefore we've got to ban free speech.
Yeah, I mean, we could get very depressed about this, couldn't we, Alex? We could all start, predicting that, global tyranny is definitely going to come tomorrow. I think we have to hold out a glimmer of hope. You look at Australia. Australia is the Liberal Party is probably about to defeat the Labour Party over there in the coming elections, which means that a Conservative administration which doesn't believe in man-made global warming will be there. That will give an example to those of us freedom fighters who don't believe in this conspiracy. It'll give us a chance to fight back. I'm relying indeed on you Americans to overthrow Obama. If you don't get rid of him, then I'm going to be very disappointed in you. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do in Europe. We are a socialist.
Well, listen, I agree with you, but I mean, take Cameron, your new prime minister.
Yeah,
I saw him a few months ago saying Brown wasn't doing enough on climate change.
Yep. It's hard for your listeners to believe, but we have a excuse me. We have a Conservative Prime Minister a conservative who believes in global warming even more passionately than the socialist administration, is just booted out. He announced his plans. The first thing he did when he became Prime Minister, he announced that he wants Britain to become the greenest economy in the world. Well, you and I know that the greenest economy means the worst economy, because a green economy is no kind of economy at all, because it's based on alternative energy, and alternative energy is an alternative to energy, i.e. no energy at all. It doesn't work. It's too expensive. The only way you can make it work is by fleecing the taxpayer.
He knows full well that Queenie and Prince Philip and Charles are all big supporters of this, and they're going to turn the people of England, the people of the UK, back into actual feudal serfs. That's all this is. I read the UN documents where they admit they want to go back to a feudal system because that's better for the earth. And isn't the global depression good? That means we'll have a lower carbon footprint.
Actually, I'll tell you something very interesting, Alex. Everyone thinks that the Duke of Edinburgh, i.e. the Queen's husband, is a great believer in global warming. I can tell you for a fact that he doesn't believe it. In fact, the Duke of Edinburgh asked for a leading climate skeptic to give a talk at one of the Britain's institutions, and the invitation was rejected. It was withdrawn rather, not by the Duke of Edinburgh, but by the left wingers on the organisation. Prince Charles is totally on the wrong side. I mean, he's very much, he's a great believer in man, bear, pig. He says rubbish like, we have 100 months left to save the world. But his dad, actually, on this particular issue, is sound, as we would say.
Well, I have noticed that Prince Philip, and I disagree with most of his views on population reduction and the rest of it, I have seen him criticize nanotech and genetic engineering, because if you want to talk about something that could potentially get out of control, it is these cross-species crops. But you don't hear 99% of these environmental groups with any concern about that, something that could have a potential. So I do have to agree with Prince Philip on that front as well. Let's take a few calls for James Dillingpole. Writes for a bunch of publications. Rattle off some of the newspapers you write for in your website. James.
I have a blog on the Telegraph. I write for the Spectator. I write for Human Events. I write for I'm a whore, Alex. I write for everyone who'll pay me. With the emphasis on pay, please, everyone.
Well, you got to get some pay to pay all those taxes. Let's go ahead and talk to John. John calling. You're on the air, John. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from northern Michigan, Alex and James, and I heard a retired Secret Service and Kansas State trooper who lives up here in northern Michigan talk yesterday on a program regarding a call he got from a sheriff in a rural city down along the coastline. And this sheriff or chief of police was a former military, and he says that regular Army has begun to come into their area. And the concern here with this gentleman, Greg Evenson, is that this oil spill is putting not only it going into the water, but the chemical they're using to break it up is very highly toxic.
Yeah, no, it's worse than the oil itself. Oil's 100% biodegradable. There's regular microbes already in the water that would eat most of it.
Yeah.
They needed to block the estuaries where the fish have their hatcheries, where they breed. But the government wouldn't let them build those berms to block it and protect those key fisheries, and they're still not letting them. But I don't want to poo-poo what people are saying, and I don't know this particular person you're talking about.
No, Alex.
I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to put you on hold. I made phone calls 2 days ago to the places that were in these news articles I saw about all this regular Army, and I called hotels, and I called gas stations, and I said, "Are you seeing troops?" And they said, "No." What you do have is you have BP employees who are bossing, and this is on CBS television, BP employees telling the Coast Guard what to do at gunpoint, kicking media off the beach. So there is a cover-up going on. James Dillingpole, your take on that, then I'll go back to John in Michigan.
Well, I hadn't heard that, Alex. That's very interesting. I mean, I don't see Obama being a kind of, in this particular instance, being a kind of sinister man trying to stage a cover up. I see an incompetent man who is terrified of the angry calls he's getting from Louisiana, and he's desperate to show himself as a man who's doing something.
That's why he's talking about kicking butt and things, which is sophomoric.
Yeah. All this nonsense about kicking butt, all this Brit bashing, it's entirely unnecessary. Given that, although there are 40% British shareholders in BP, there's also 39% American shareholders.
No, I mean that's asinine. It's a total red herring. John, what was the point you were trying to make?
Well, he stated, and he does have a website. If you let me want to give it, I'll give it to you. But he talked about the benzene and the natural gas that's coming out of this spill too. That's getting up into the atmosphere and it will become toxic, and that they're planning that. He says they're planning for possible evacuations for at least 100 miles, and if not 150.
No,
miles.
I've seen those news reports, and I appreciate your call. And we made phone calls, and I mean, in fact, I'm going to do this. We have another guest coming up. But after I go through these calls, I'm going to open the phones up only